Imagine walking into a room where every look is filled with suspicion, where your accent is considered inappropriate, and your name no one remembers. But you still step up to the stage, not just to argue, but to rewrite the rules they've always used to keep you out. This is not a Hollywood movie. This is the true story of Jasmine Carter, a 17-year-old black girl from Georgia who silenced Yale and then gave her a standing ovation. Jasmine Carter grew up on the outskirts of Albany, Georgia, where the sun scorched the red dirt roads every summer, and big dreams were often buried under the pressure of unpaid bills. She was the only child of Linda Carter, a single mother who worked at a Waffle House from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. Her father left when she was 4, leaving her and her mother to live in an old trailer where the air conditioner was louder than the TV. Jasmine doesn't have her own room. She sleeps on a sofa that folds out into a bed every night. But she never complains, because Linda, who never went to college, always reminds her daughter of one thing. You don't need to wear better clothes than them, you just need to think smarter than them. Every night after work, Linda would make a cup of Lipton tea, sit down at the kitchen table, and help Jasmine practice her debates from an old notebook. Each topic was a thoughtful conversation, and that was the start. When Jasmine applied for the qualifying round of Yale National Debate Invitational, she never thought she would be selected. Candidates often come from private schools, have personal coaches, tutoring classes, and reference materials lined up in libraries. And her? An old laptop bought from a pawn shop, a phone with a cracked screen in the corner. And her mother. Just her mother. When the email from Yale appeared with the subject line, "Congratulations, you are invited," she cried. Linda stood behind, her hands shaking, resting lightly on her daughter's shoulders. "Now the world will hear you, Jasmine." The black iron gate, the gray stone building, the tall bell tower, Yale appeared like a postcard, but nothing in the picture prepared her for the coldness in the eyes of those around her. The moment she stepped into the debate hall, Jasmine felt the difference. The tailored suits, the expensive watches, the leather backpacks, and the way people looked at her, as if she was in the wrong place. Grayson Vanderbilt III, the scion of one of America's wealthiest families, was the first to speak. "Who are you? I don't think there's any cleaning scheduled today." His whole group of friends burst out laughing. Jasmine gritted her teeth. She had learned to keep quiet when necessary, but that didn't mean she hadn't remembered. All the contestants were divided into small groups to get acquainted. Each group had a topic, a roster, a practice plan, except for her. Her name did not appear on any list. When she asked the coordinator, a third-year student with blonde hair and round-rimmed glasses, he simply said, "Oh, maybe they're wrong. You can sit outside." Jasmine sat alone in the corner of the library. She turned on her computer. There was no Wi-Fi. She pulled out her old notebook and read the notes she and her mother had written over the years.
In the dormitory for out-of-state contestants, Jasmine tried to make conversation, but everyone was quiet. When she entered, whispers cut in. "This is a debate show, right? I thought this was Yale, not an internship." Jasmine lay with her face to the wall, but her tears could not lie on her pillow. The phone vibrated. A text message from Mom. "I didn't send you there to get applause. I sent you there to make you listen. Consideration of socioeconomic background in college admissions should be minimized." First contestant, Grayson. He took the stage with a booming voice, confident demeanor, sharp evidence, and a speech that looked like it had been rehearsed over dozens of hours of professional training. The audience nodded, the judges smiled. Jasmine's name was called last. An awkward silence filled the room. Some people even turned away. She stepped forward. Her hands were shaking slightly. She adjusted the microphone. "Before I begin, I want to thank Yale for this invitation. Even though some people in this room believe I shouldn't be here. A forced laugh rang out. Jasmine continued. She spoke not with technique, but with heart. She told of schools without air conditioning, classrooms without debate clubs, students who had to work after school to help pay for electricity. She cited Supreme Court rulings, and then she paused, looking straight at Grayson. Some people aren't born with an invitation on the table. We have to earn it, one word at a time. When she finished, there was no thunderous applause, just silence, deep enough to know someone had been moved. Jasmine's name was at the bottom of the list of 16 people who made it to the next round. She didn't come out on top, but she wasn't eliminated. Grayson glanced past her, smiling. Miracles do happen sometimes. Jasmine did not reply, because she knew every miracle was created with sweat, faith, and smudged notebooks written with her mother after work.
Her mother's voice still echoed in her head as Jasmine walked out of Yale's halls that day. I didn't teach you how to scream the loudest. I taught you how to speak at the right time to silence the room. And, indeed, the room fell silent as she spoke. But that silence, like Grayson's gaze, wasn't entirely respectful. It was a kind of quiet threat, an unspoken warning. We let you in, but don't think you'll go any further. Jasmine returned to the small dormitory for out-of-state contestants. The room was so quiet she could hear the wind blowing through the old windows. Though no one spoke, she could sense a change in the atmosphere around her, as if her passing the qualifying round had violated the natural order of the place. She sat alone at the ground floor cafeteria for a self-service dinner. Other groups were huddled together, laughing and discussing strategies for the next round. She, train in hand, sat near the old bookshelves, rereading her notes in her notebook. That's when her phone vibrated. A new email. Change next round debate topic. Urgent. Jasmine opened it, her brows furrowed. It said that due to scheduling conflicts with the judges, the entire second round topic had been changed. The American education system values conformity over creativity. Below, in bold, if the contestant does not comply with the new topic, he/she will be eliminated from the competition.
She turned on her computer and pulled up the official exam schedule. No mention of a change of subject. She searched the group messages on the internal forum. No one had said anything. She considered texting, but hesitated. She thought, what if this is a test? If I don't comply, will I really be eliminated? There was no time to wait for confirmation. She couldn't risk it. Jasmine mixed a pack of instant noodles, added water from an old thermos, and started over. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, taking notes on paper, sketching out her arguments. This time the topic was more abstract. Not economics, not public policy. It was values. She was arguing about creativity, something she could feel, not measure. She thought of home, where children without art supplies made art with chalk and clay, where she wrote her first poem on the cover of a pizza box. Perhaps it is in the places that are considered lacking in creativity that true creativity is born, she whispered. The clock ticked to 2 a.m., eyes stinging, shoulders aching, but the speech was done. Not perfect, but true. She fell asleep while her laptop was still on. The next morning, she walked into the hall with red eyes. The papers in her hand were slightly crumpled from falling asleep on them. She hadn't had breakfast yet, but she wasn't hungry. Her stomach was churning with a vague fear. Something is not right. Before she could reach the check-in desk, Professor Eleanor Grant, the contest coordinator, called her name. Miss Carter, where have you been? Her voice was as cold and harsh as a winter morning.
Jasmine was stunned. I'm preparing a new topic. The email notification... Professor Grant interrupted. What email? Jasmine opened her phone and held it out. Grant glanced at it,
his face cold as stone. "We did not send this email. This is a fake message." There was a deadly silence. Jasmine's head spun. "Have I been tricked?" she muttered, her hands shaking. Grant pursed his lips and said, "Her theme remains. Affirmative action policies do more harm than good, and you have 5 minutes to prepare. No changes." Jasmine stood frozen in place. Her eyes were fixed on the piece of paper with the same topic. No prep, no argument, no evidence, nothing. She looked around and caught his eye. Grayson Vanderbilt standing near the judge's table. He smirked. Then, slowly, like a play without words, Grayson made the shh hand sign and quietly whispered, "Oops." Jasmine felt like she had been slapped in the face. One truth was clear. Grayson himself was behind the fake email, and no one was on her side. She had 2 choices: leave the hall or step up to the podium. Her mother's voice rang out again, gentle but powerful. "You didn't come this far just to give up, Jasmine."
She clenched her blank notebook and pen. Left with no other choice, she sat down, opened a new page, and wrote from scratch. When her name was called, Jasmine stepped up to the podium. No legal references, no charts, no research citations. Only memories, experiences, and real-life emotions. This education system taught me a lot of things, but what it forgot to teach me is how to protect a student's true voice when no one is listening. She tells of the school where she grew up. No science labs, no music hall, no guidance counselors. But there was a mother who knew how to turn a kitchen table into a classroom and how to use an aluminum spoon as a bell to signal the end of class. She talks about innovation, not about PowerPoint or new apps. It's about do the most with the least. She ended with the sentence, "If education is about learning to listen, then I stand here today not because I am allowed to, but because I know I must speak." The whole hall was silent. Not the awkward silence, but the silence of listening. When the scoreboard was announced late in the afternoon, Jasmine ranked 5th place, much higher than the candidates considered strong candidates. Grayson stood near the scoreboard, his lips pressed together. He wasn't smiling anymore. No one dared to face her. But Jasmine didn't need an apology, because she knew her existence at Yale was a rebuttal. If there's one thing Jasmine Carter learned early in life, it's this. It's not the hardest blow that knocks someone down. It's the unexpected blow from someone everyone thinks is impossible. She never expected Yale, a school that symbolizes intelligence, justice, and neutrality, to be the place where she was almost eliminated by a fake email. But she was still standing. And this time, she was not going to stay silent. The evening after the second round, Jasmine returned to her dorm room. In her hand was a cold sandwich and a note from the dorm staff. "Professor Grant wants to see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Downstairs office, DeBartolo building." She felt her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was an invitation or a warning. Professor Eleanor Grant's office is in an old hallway where the light from stained glass windows reflects off the dark wood floors, making it look more like an old library than an executive office. On the walls are photos of debate champions from the 1970s, all white, in blue jackets, standing in front of a Yale Debate Society banner. Professor Grant did not invite her to sit down immediately. "I reviewed the email you received," she said, not looking up from her laptop screen. Jasmine stood still, her hands clutching the hem of her dress. "It was sent from a pirated server. The address was crafted to mimic the school email format. The sender used a VPN to hide their identity,
But, Grant looked directly at her now, we found it. Who did that? Jasmine asked, her heart pounding. Grant leaned back. Her eyes were no longer cold, but calm, somewhat pitying. Grayson Vanderbilt. The truth was confirmed. The creator of that elaborate trap was none other than Grayson, the top of the rankings, praised by the professor, and hailed by the news agencies as a champion candidate. He will be dealt with? Jasmine asked, not hiding her indignation.
Grant was silent for a few seconds. The thing is, Yale doesn't want a scandal. It will be handled internally. He won't be allowed to compete in nationals again. But the information won't be released. The words were like a splash of cold water in her face. What about my honor? What about my words? Who will pay for them? She burst out. Grant's voice was slow, somewhat hesitant. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying the system doesn't handle it properly sometimes. Jasmine tightened her grip on her backpack. Then she nodded. Then I'll be the one to say it. I'll handle it. And she walked out of the office. The door closed like the first knock of the hammer of justice. The semifinal theme was announced that evening. Social movements driven by digital activism are less effective than traditional forms of organizing. Jasmine almost laughed. Finally, a topic I don't need Google to understand. She returned to the dormitory, spread out her notebook, opened her laptop, put on her headphones, and started writing. That day of the exam, the hall was packed. Jasmine's opponent was Priya Menon from a prestigious private academy in New Jersey, with a list of awards as long as a symphony. Priya presented smoothly, without stumbling over a word, citing each number and each model to analyze the effectiveness of social activities. The crowd applauded. Jasmine stepped forward. No flowery words.
"I'm not here to talk to you about charts," she began. "I'm here to talk about a little house in Albany, Georgia, where after Katrina, we had no food, no electricity, but we had an old phone and a Facebook account." She told how her mother posted a plea for help, and strangers, from as far away as Colorado to Oregon, sent $20, $30 for them to buy clean water. Traditional action didn't knock on my door, but digital action did. The applause began to break out. She ended with a sentence that left the room breathless. We can't discount a movement just because it started on a screen. Because in some places, that's the only way a voice can get out of our walls. The semifinal winners were announced shortly afterwards. Jasmine Carter advances to finals. No one was surprised. No one smiled wryly, because this time she deserves, not because of her background, but because her voice touched something deeper than argument. Faith. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep, not because she was worried, but because she was preparing for something bigger than victory. As she was printing out her practice speech in the library, a senior student who had been Grayson's assistant approached her. "I think you should know, Grayson doesn't give up." "What do you mean?" Jasmine asked, warily. He's telling people that Yale is biased to have a pretty story this year, and that her win wasn't really due to ability." Jasmine smiled faintly. "Not surprised. They said that about my mom when she got a job at Waffle House. They said that when I got into the honors program. And now they say that at Yale." She folded the paper. Her eyes were cold, but not angry. "But I'm not here to prove myself worthy. I'm here so that no one can deny me anymore. There are battles not to win, but to prove that you are no longer afraid of losing." That was what Jasmine Carter was thinking on the morning of the Yale finals. She sat alone on the stone steps in front of Sanders Hall, clutching a black coffee from the vending machine, watching the gray clouds drift low over the Gothic vaults of the campus. The air carried the taste of eastern autumn, cold, crisp, and hazy like a dream about to end. Sanders Hall that day was unlike any other competition. The audience was packed. Yale alumni, media representatives, even a camera from PBS were there to cover the finals. The media whispered the story. The black girl from Georgia versus the Vanderbilt son. A David versus Goliath kind of thing. But this time, Goliath knew he was being watched. Just before the debate, Professor Eleanor Grant approached Jasmine backstage. You are about to enter a room that is not meant for you. But make no mistake, you deserve every second of this stage.
Jasmine nodded. No more fear, no more hesitation, no more need for permission. She came here, by herself. On the big screen of the hall appeared the theme of the final match. Traditional institutions remain the best guardians of academic integrity. A chorus of whispers arose. The topic seemed written specifically for Grayson, the perfect representative of tradition. Grayson stepped onto the stage first. Shiny leather shoes, dark blue jacket, bright eyes. He began. Yale, Princeton, Harvard, the torches that have guided the academic world for centuries. We stand on the shoulders of giants, systems that have upheld academic fairness for generations. He cited documents, the words of the former education minister, and listed a series of models to protect integrity, such as school honor, independent disciplinary boards, and peer review mechanisms. The audience nodded. The judges took notes. He left the podium to a small but loud applause. She walked out. No projector, no mind map, no accessories, just a notebook. We are debating today, ladies and gentlemen, not just about what is being protected, but is the person being protected. She stopped. I once received a fake email from a contestant. The goal was to get me disqualified, and the system, the organization we are talking about, did not speak up.
No one moved. I won't name names, because there's no need. The truth doesn't need to be embellished. Jasmine cites historical examples of colleges that have barred women, people of color, and LGBTQ+ students. She speaks not harshly, but calmly, like someone who knows where she stands and dares to stand. Integrity is not the preservation of the past. It is the willingness to face it, correct it, and move forward. When it came to questioning, Grayson attacked immediately. You said the system failed, but if there was no system, you wouldn't be standing here. Jasmine smiled. I am standing here not because of the system. I am standing here despite that system. And that's the difference. Grayson repeated the arguments. If everyone accuses the organization of being biased, there will be no trust in anything. Jasmine nodded. We don't need blind faith. We need transparency. The audience gasped. For the first time, no one looked at Grayson with certainty. Jasmine stood at the podium. Her hands rested on an old notebook. If an organization truly stands for integrity, it must have the courage to look at itself, even when that image is not pretty. I am not here to fight against tradition. I am here to remind us that tradition itself needs to be examined, questioned, and renewed, lest it become a cover for privilege. Applause broke out. This time, it echoed throughout the room. From the most hidden corners,
from the very old judges who had sat through hundreds of debates.
After more than 20 minutes of waiting, the dispatcher came out with a sealed envelope. The winner of the 2025 Yale National Debate Championship is... one breath. Jasmine Carter. The whole hall exploded. Grayson stood still. He didn't clap, he didn't bow, he didn't congratulate. He just kept quiet, grabbed his bag, and headed for the exit. Jasmine stood on stage. Professor Grant approached and shook her hand, hers trembling slightly for the first time. She didn't just win one debate, she opened doors for many after her. The camera panned. The audience stood up. The impossible moment happened. When the hall screen went off, Jasmine checked her phone. There was a message from her mother. "I told you, honey, you don't need their permission to shine." She sat on the stone steps and took a deep breath. The wind was cold, but inside she felt strangely warm. There are names that were once overlooked on the list, but one day they will be the headlines on the news. The morning after the finals, Jasmine Carter awoke not to an alarm clock, but to the sound of surprised whispers outside the dormitory hallway. She stepped outside. The Yale student newspaper was delivered earlier than usual. Front page, bold.
The girl from Georgia conquers Yale and unmasks the favorite. Just below the headline is a picture of her on the podium, holding the trophy, while in the background, Grayson turns away, silently, as if the story of a generation is coming to a close. Jasmine was folding the newspaper when a dorm clerk brought her a dark blue envelope with a Yale seal. Inside was a handwritten note. "Ms. Carter, I thought you should know. The board has completed its internal investigation. Grayson Vanderbilt III's actions have been cleared. His national application will not be accepted. The partnering organizations have been notified." No signature, no name. But the last line says, "We cannot erase the past, but we can begin to listen." That afternoon, as Jasmine sat on the porch of her apartment building, rereading her speech, the phone rang. An unknown number. She picked up. A hoarse voice on the other end of the line said, "Jasmine? This is him, Calvin Hughes, NPR education correspondent." Jasmine was startled. "I heard about your story through Yale, and I think America needs to hear more about people like you." His voice was not hurried. He did not ask too quickly, but like an experienced old man who had witnessed many times the excluded quietly triumph.
"I'm not calling to compliment you. I'm calling to say we're starting to understand. And if you're okay with it, we'd like to invite you on the show All Things Considered next week." A few weeks later, Jasmine returned to Albany, Georgia. No trophy in hand, no camera, just a backpack, a hood, and the smile of someone who had just survived a storm. The mobile home she lived in was still the same, faded tin roof, rickety wind steps, but now it seemed brighter in the evening light. Her mother, Mrs. Linda, was sitting on the porch, sipping a cup of sweet tea. When she saw her daughter coming home, she just smiled and said nothing. She just reached out and held her daughter's hand tightly. "I knew you would win, but I didn't think you would win such." Jasmine laughed. "I didn't think I won either, until they called my name." That evening, while mother and daughter were washing dishes, a beep came from the phone. Jasmine opened the mailbox. Email subject: "Congratulations from Yale Summer Institute, Full Scholarship Award." Brief content with paragraph. "We congratulate you on your selection into Yale's Honors Pre-College program with a full scholarship. Your journey is more than just a profile. It's what inspired us to redefine what potential means. We can't wait to see how far you go, Jasmine. At the end of the email, there is a line.
P.S. This letter was personally reviewed by Professor Eleanor Grant. From the girl who was once asked, "Who let you in here?" Jasmine has now become the person mentioned in educational articles, in seminars. On TikTok, there's a clip of her speaking, captioned, "She didn't just win the debate, she rewrote the narrative." The clip has more than 3 million views. One weekend evening, while her mother was folding clothes, Jasmine sat next to her and asked quietly, "Mom, do you think you really deserve it?" Linda stopped and tilted her head. "You don't deserve because you win. You win because you deserve. That's the biggest difference I've learned in life." That summer, Jasmine returned to Yale, this time as part of a formal program. No more stares, no more unspoken questions. She entered the gate like a person who had been rejected, now returning to fix the nameplate hanging on the wall. One afternoon, as she walked past the main building, she stopped in front of a photo of the champions. Next to Grayson's picture is an empty frame.
And right below that was a picture of her in an old brown coat, looking straight into the camera, strong and calm. Jasmine Carter, 2025 National Debate Champion. Not just heard, remembered. This is not a story about one girl. It is about everyone who has ever been overlooked, who has been asked, "Who let you in?" Had to prove myself worthy of being heard in a room that wasn't meant for me. Jasmine Carter's story doesn't stop at Yale. Because when you make a system listen, you don't just change yourself. You change the rules of the game. And if you've heard this far, if this story touched something in your heart, hit subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from, and share if you ever feel left off the list. Because for every person who stands up, another generation will no longer need to bow.